I don't think he actually died. I just think we just lost track of him because the Packers were so meddling
Well,
during those.
we're taking metaphors to the extreme, I guess. Is when, I mean, hey, like I was born in 1983, which I know for
Okay.
you, 1983 in the NFL can strike all kinds of great things,
Oh
including
God.
that draft, right? Okay, so
Oh,
we'll come back to that. But because I
sure.
was born then, I was ridiculed and picked on my entire childhood through grade school up into
Sure.
middle school about being a Packers fan, and that's what I used to get shouted: "Players go to Green Bay to die," and so that's
Right.
what
Right.
stuck
Right.
with me.
I like that. Oh man. Well, the Packers. The Packers. I saw the first time I ever saw the Packers in person was in 1988. They played a game up in Buffalo, and Don Makowski was the quarterback, who was actually from Buffalo, and Buffalo had a very good defense that year, and I know they beat the Packers that day 28-0. And I had end zone seats, and Buffalo scored not one but two defensive touchdowns en route to a victory. So it's kind of cool.
And how old were you then?
I was I turned 13 December of '88. So.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So that was a heck of a memory for a teenager.
Yeah. Well, my 4 years in high school were the 4 years the Bills made the Super Bowl. So and then my favorite baseball team is the Blue Jays, and they made the World Series two times during my high school years. So I had a good stretch there.
Well, that's there. And then and then the Bills' careers went to die.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have another friend that's a Bills fan too, and I feel bad for him because the Bills fans to me are the closest to what I would consider Packer fans. They're passionate, and yet when it comes down to it, they're pretty classy folks. Like, I mean, the trash talk can go so far, but at the end of the day, there's a line that those two fan bases, I don't think for the most part cross, because we can't say everyone, like we can't do that. But
right. Yeah.
So
well,
let's get back to 1983 because I know you'll have a lot to say. 1983, is that one of the best years in your opinion of just from start of the draft through the whole season with all the news and stuff? Because given back then we didn't have Twitter, internet, all that,
sure.
And yet that's got a lot of documentaries and stuff. So is that one of the ones that really sticks out in your mind as best overall years for football?
There were a few good games. I think, historically I have other seasons that I think rank ahead of it, but obviously the draft is number one. It's the best draft ever to me, 83. I think, along with 74. With 74's draft, the Steelers got 4 Hall of Famers in one draft, so I would often look at that as probably the greatest. But 83 is right up there because you had, Elway and Marino and Jim Kelly and Kenny O'Brien, and Todd Blackledge, and Eric Dickerson. I mean, Tony Eason. It was just a fantastic draft. So, yeah, obviously that was a great one. The other thing, 83, Detroit Lions and San Francisco 49ers had a great divisional round game. A lot of people forget it's like a forgotten classic. San Francisco won 24-23, and it's really the closest Detroit came during the 80s to any kind of success. Then the 49ers lost in the NFC Championship game 24-21. The Redskins were a powerful team that year. During the regular season 1983, the Redskins were defending champions. They only lost 2 regular season games, both by 1 point. The opener was to Dallas. They lost 31-30, and then they lost to the Packers 48-47. Those were their only 2 regular season losses. So in the championship game, they're big favorites over the 49ers, and they got out to a 21-0 lead, but then the 49ers came back in the fourth quarter, led by the great Joe Montana. But finally, Washington outlasted them. They beat them 24-21. And then the Super Bowl was a big letdown because the Raiders and the Redskins were supposedly very evenly matched, but the Raiders crushed them with when Marcus Allen had a tremendous Super Bowl. It was his second season out of USC, and he was fantastic. 20 carries, 191 yards, and one of the great plays in Super Bowl history when he ran the one for 76 yards to get the Raiders the lead. But I had a lot of great memories of '83 because I was turning 8 years old that season.
Well, that's a good age. It's a good
Yeah.
age. Especially when it comes to our sports memories, that's a good
Yeah.
age of lots of cool things happening. You finally start to get that little competitiveness for a team, and that's a
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
age to, yeah. So okay, so if 83 isn't your best, then why don't you give us your list? I mean, that's just go
Sure.
ahead, shoot.
To me, the greatest playoff season, I think number one is 2015, and then 2014 is kind of a close second. I think 2015 is an absolutely mesmerizing season to reflect upon. This is the year that Denver won the Super Bowl, where Von Miller was so incredible. Remember this?
That created the Von Miller dance. Yes, I will always
Yeah.
remember that.
Yeah. So playoff games that year. This is what happened. About mid-season, Denver was undefeated, and they played Kansas City, and Peyton Manning was dreadful in this game, which I think it was like his 500th game or something. Something crazy, like, some crazy stat. I forget now, but most starts for a quarterback or some crazy stat he had that day. And he goes into the game and he plays dreadfully bad, and Tennessee routs Denver that day. And then it's realized, like, later in the week that Manning's injured. He's going to be out for some time. So Brock Osweiler becomes the starter. Okay? And so in the meantime, New England is starting to self-destruct, because that same day Manning gets injured for several weeks. Julian Edelman breaks his foot. They beat the Giants that day on a last-second Gostkowski field goal. I think it was 54 yards or something. So the whole tenor of the AFC started getting super weird. And meanwhile, Cincinnati was a very strong team in 2015, believe it or not, under Coach Marvin Lewis and Andy Dalton at quarterback. So it really got intriguing in the AFC. So the playoffs start, and ultimately Denver got the top seed, New England got the 2 seed, and Cincinnati finished with 3 seed. And I think they all finished with the same exact record, but with just tiebreakers and everything. That's the way it broke down. So now the Pittsburgh plays at Cincinnati in the first playoff game that year in the AFC, and Roethlisberger gets hurt in this game, like he ruins his shoulder. And at the time, Pittsburgh is winning 15-0. Well, A.J. McCarron is in for Andy Dalton, who broke his finger like late in the season. And he leads Cincinnati on this comeback, and he makes the score 16-15 with about a minute and a half to go. But what happens next is just absolutely bizarre. The Steelers' backup quarterback, Landry Jones, throws an interception. So Cincinnati has the ball, and all they have to do is kill the clock, and they win the game. Well, what happens is they fumble. So Pittsburgh gets the ball back, and then they said, well, we're just going to put in Roethlisberger with one arm, And so he kind of limps the team down the field, and then Vontaze Burfict gets a roughing penalty on Antonio Brown.
That's the game. Yeah, I remember that.
And then Adam Jones, Pac-Man Jones, gets a penalty for shoving Joey Porter, who shouldn't have been on the field.
Yeah,
so
I remember that.
All of a sudden, Pittsburgh has a chip shot, and then they win it, and it was like the worst loss I think I've ever seen. So Pittsburgh advances with half a Roethlisberger and no Antonio Brown, and they take on Denver the week later. Well, Denver has Manning, who by this time is just a noodle arm. And this game, this Pittsburgh-Denver game is insane because everybody's hurt, but Denver's defense starts really stepping up under Wade Phillips, and they had DeMarcus Ware and Von Miller and Chris Harris and Aqib Talib, and just a fantastic defense. Well, they come back and they win that game against Pittsburgh. The Patriots beat the Chiefs like they always do. And so in the championship game, it's New England and Denver in Denver. Well, New England goes into Denver as a 4-point favorite. And but Manning plays really good in the first half. Like, he hits Owen Daniels for 2 touchdowns. And surprisingly, Denver gets on top. Well, eventually Peyton runs out of gas. And by the third quarter, he couldn't even throw the ball anymore. He was so, past his prime and had nothing left on his passes. And Jamie Collins turns it into a sack fest. The only problem for the Patriots was Von Miller was absolutely unblockable. And if you remember this game, he hit Brady himself 10 times overall Denver's defense hit Brady 23 times, but still they came within a 2-point conversion of tying the game because, you know the Patriots, they never quit.
It's just the Patriots. It's annoying, but it is what it is.
Yeah. So Denver makes the Super Bowl. On the NFC side of things, this is the year Carolina's 15-1. The first NFC playoff game is when Blair Walsh misses the 26-yard field goal at the end against the Seahawks. Do you remember that one?
Yes, I do.
It was outside. Yeah, it was an outside game.
Yep. Because they were waiting on their new stadium, so they were at M&T Bank Stadium that Minnesota Gophers play on.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was like 2 degrees outside, and Minnesota's playing Seattle, and it was a great defensive struggle, as you'd expect from those two clubs at that season. So that was a miracle game. Then a week later, Green Bay plays the Cardinals in an epic, one of the greatest football games I've ever seen. This is when Aaron Rodgers hits the 2 Hail Marys on the one drive.
Jeff freaking Janis. Only plays the dude ever made.
And then Larry Fitzgerald goes all world in overtime on a play that Carson Palmer escapes the
freaking middle screen.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the middle screen to score. So then, so that.
Why do you got to hurt me like that?
No, I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm just saying, I mean, when you think back to some of the greatest playoff games I've ever seen, there's like 5 in that one playoff season, like epics.
Well, okay. Here. What about, how impressive now is your memory then of the next year of what Aaron Rodgers did in that epic, playoff run where he says run the table, and they end up in the NFC Championship game. And if you remember correctly, halfway through the third quarter, they ran out of offensive linemen. So they literally had LaTroy Guion playing right guard, who, by the way, was a defensive tackle. So, I mean, being a history guy, is there ever a team that you can remember? Because this is important for me because there's so much of this talk about Aaron. And when I look at who he had not only playing defensive back, but blocking for him, I don't know, Brandon, is there any other team you can think of that had that many injuries and still was being in a game of that importance that late in the year?
No, that you're right. Yeah, that was an incredible accomplishment. He was fantastic. He's a one-man team. He does amazing things. So yeah, I'm trying to, as I'm babbling, I'm thinking about older teams. Teams from yesterday.
Yeah.
I think the 76 Steelers might be one because that was a team that started the year 1-4, and they finished 10-4. And in the playoffs, both Franco Harris and Rocky Blair got injured, and by the time they played the Raiders in the championship game, they had no legitimate running backs at all, and Terry Bradshaw was
in an era that was very important, so that's very comparable.
Yeah. That's one that stands out to me. They had just way too many injuries, and by the way, they had to go to Oakland, and Oakland was 13-1 that season, so that was a tough draw for them. So I mean, that's the first one that would come. I think the 79 Oilers come to mind too. You might remember Earl Campbell and their starting quarterback Dan Pastorini were injured, and they went into San Diego, who had Dan Fouts and Kellen Winslow and Charlie Joyner, and they went in there and they beat them. And then they played Pittsburgh really tough. This is when Pittsburgh was going for their 4th Super Bowl title. So that's that Oilers team's another one that kind of limped into the championship game. I think one I think of too is 07 Chargers.
That's a good one.
Yeah, Tomlinson was hurt. Rivers was playing on an ACL.
Torn ACL, limping around on a frickin' what they give you post-surgery to keep your leg from being re-injured.
Exactly. They had no prayer against the Patriots.
No, but you know what? That guy, honestly, he's like the most under-respected quarterback I can really think of off the top of my head. He's been around forever, and honestly, the ball never bounces Phillip Rivers' way. Like, championship teams always need those couple of bounces. He never gets them, ever. I just, it baffles me. And yet he gets no respect because of, the lack of playoff success and this and that, but.
Sure, yeah.
So, okay, here we go. What is